Astarion, my love, my heart. You've been patient through it all. Your love is the fuel that drives me forward.
Your soul warms thinking of Lily Aurora Ravengard, your adopted daughter. A treasure of a girl, found at the entrance of the Open Hand Temple.
Welcome to the Forgotten Realms, the home of Dungeons & Dragons and Baldur's Gate 3. And today we'll be discussing our favorite bloodsucker, Astarion. So you've romanced the spicy stabby vampire. You've fought side by side, laughed at his snark, cried over his trauma, and maybe, just maybe, watched him bare his soul in the moonlit graveyard. But now you're asking the real question. The question that separates thirst posters from endgame stands. Would Astarion make a good father? Now, I know what you're thinking. He's a vampire. He's got trauma. He literally has daddy issues with a capital C for Cazador. But if you peel back the layers of trauma, bloodlust, and self-loathing, is there a man who could cradle a child with tenderness? Could the spawn of the Underdark become dad material? And by the way, this entire essay was a request from our Discord, because vampire discourse is something we take very seriously around here. And that's not a joke. I am a hardcore vampire simp. In this essay, we'll be focusing on Spawn Astarion, as Ascended Astarion is so radically different, he would need his own essay. Plus, he's more inclined to create spawn, which are vampiric children in a sense, rather than become a normal dad. But let's be clear. He is now a living vampire, so he very well could have an actual child. But that is 100% its own essay. This video pulls from a wide range of materials, from official materials to official fictional materials, online resources, D&D communities, and years around the table. If you see a little source logo pop up in the lower left corner of the screen, that means I am quoting or paraphrasing something directly from that source. If not, it's a paraphrased combination, just like an academic essay. And just a quick transparency note, any non-gameplay or non-official images in this video, unless they happen to be my own, are created using paid subscriptions to Canva, CapCut, and Shutterstock. I like making sure artists get their royalties instead of relying solely on free resources, now that I have the means to do so. I think transparency matters, even if you're thirsting over a hot vampire. And if you guys enjoy this kind of deep dive fangirl academia, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. It helps more than you know. And it lets me keep making content about our spicy, emotionally damaged vampire. And last essay, you guys beat our YouTube overlords and proved that more than 10% of returning viewers would subscribe. So enjoy that S rating, babes, because you earned it. Now grab your cozy drink and relax, because I'm about to go a little deep. Let's start with the obvious. Astarion's trauma is not subtle. This is a man who's been held in bondage for over 2 centuries, turned into a weapon, a plaything, a servant, and most importantly, for our purposes, he was forcibly molded by a, quote, father figure, end quote, who weaponized spice, power, and identity. Astarion doesn't remember his mortal family. We never get a glimpse of what kind of childhood he had before Cazador claimed him. So, in a sick, foundational way, Cazador is the only father Astarion remembers. And that's where the rot starts. Cazador didn't just control Astarion physically. He controlled his sense of self, his autonomy, his voice, his body, everything. He took the archetypal role of father and twisted it into something monstrous. That's the root of Astarion's daddy issues. He was never given love without a leash, praise without manipulation, or purpose without pain. Now, imagine trying to become a father when that's the only role model you've ever known. This is why Astarion's trauma isn't just something to be healed. It's a legacy he's inherited, a blueprint for power, control, and identity that he'll have to choose to either recreate or actively dismantle. And this is the real crux of whether he'd make a good father. What does he do with what was done to him? Because yes, Astarion is capable of love. We see that. He's capable of softness, of laughter, of holding someone close and wanting to keep them safe. But trauma doesn't vanish just because you want to be good. It shows up in how you respond when a kid screams, when the baby won't sleep, when you're scared of your own voice when you have an argument. In that way, Cazador's legacy lingers. Astarion will have to become the parent that he never had, and that takes brutal honesty. It takes intention. It takes healing. It's not impossible, but it's also not guaranteed. So, would Astarion make a good father? Well, that depends on whether he chooses to become a different kind of man than the one who made him. And while I also have daddy issues, mine come from the fact that my dad, technically my stepdad, is so loving and perfect. He literally rescued me from a religious cult, and only one other man has ever come close to that level of devotion. Sorry, Astarion. I meant Neil. No. My Neil. Astarion, on the other hand, has daddy issues in a way that could actually cause him problems with being a dad himself. But here's the thing. I know for a fact that trauma doesn't define us. I survived CSA, but I learned how to build intimacy. I survived a religious, high-demand Christian nightmare-scape through the bulk of my adolescence, but I am neither in a cult nor running one today, because we as humans, we can break the cycle of abuse. We can choose to stand up, to unlearn our trauma, to give our children the kind of childhood that we never had. So today, we'll be discussing the hurdles Astarion would have to overcome to be a good parent, and whether he realistically can do that. Let's be real. In America, socially speaking, the bar for fatherhood is low. We put most of the child rearing and homemaking responsibilities onto women, even when those mothers are working full-time outside of the home. And it shouldn't be that way. Not only does this system hurt women, who are expected to juggle their career, their home, and their children like they're each full-time jobs, but it also hurts men. It robs them of basic life skills, and more importantly, it robs them of deeper emotional connections with their children. For this essay, we're going to be putting household labor and chore distribution to the side. Not because it's not important, but because we'd be here for more than 3 hours. Instead, we're going to focus on the emotional, supportive, and role model aspects of fatherhood. But just know, mommy's carrying the load of everything. I see you. This chapter isn't about judging Astarion just yet. It's about defining the lens through which we will judge him. So what actually makes a good father? Let's get one thing straight. It's not about perfection. It's not even about being fearless or always knowing what to do. What makes someone a good father is how they show up, how they adapt, how they love, protect, and grow, especially when it's hard. So how do we even measure that? For the sake of this essay, we'll be examining 8 key traits that consistently appear in child psychology, parenting research, and, let's be honest, every good dad character that ever made you cry at 3 a.m. when you were supposed to be sleeping instead of binge watching. And these traits are: number 1, protective instinct. Number 2, emotional availability. Number 3, consistency and reliability. Number 4, ability to nurture. Number 5, willingness to learn. Number 6, moral integrity. Number 7, playfulness and affection. And number 8, ability to heal cycles of trauma. Each of these will be explored in depth through a lens of Astarion's choices, voice lines, and character arc. We're not just asking, would he buy juice boxes and show up at the school play? We're asking, could he hold space for a child's fear without being consumed by his own? Let's talk about men's mental health. Because if we're going to talk about fatherhood, we have to talk about that invisible weight men are still told to carry. In the US, there's a cultural script handed to men that says, don't cry, don't feel too much, don't ask for help, don't be soft. And that script, it's killing people. When men can't express their needs, when they're taught to suppress grief, anger, affection, or vulnerability, it doesn't just disappear, it festers. It leaks out in rage, avoidance, distance, and emotional unavailability. And when that man becomes a father, those same suppressed feelings often form the emotional walls between him and his children. Worse, many men aren't given a language to even recognize what they're feeling. let alone for them to model emotional resilience for the next generation. That's why emotional availability isn't just a personality trait, it's a survival tool. It's the difference between a child learning to express their feelings and a child learning to bottle them up until they combust. So where does Astarion fall on that spectrum? Shockingly, he's actually incredible at expressing his needs, at least with the player character if he's given a safe and trusting environment. He tells us when he's scared, he breaks down crying when he's overwhelmed, he articulates his desires.
I must see this. Don't you dare say no.
Fear, rage, grief, and yes, even love.
You know, I didn't care for you when we first met, but I do now. Being with you is about more than lust or manipulating you into a tactical alliance. I love you. I love this. And I want it all.
He talks about his trauma. He lets you hold him.
I spent 200 years using my body to lure pretty things back from my master.
He wants to be held.
Well, hello. Looking for a cuddle?
There are so many powerful examples of this, but the best is probably his confession about his trauma, both his romantic confession and his non-romantic one, after you encounter the drow at Moonrise Towers.
What I wanted, how I felt about what I was doing, it never mattered. You could have asked me to do the same. To throw myself at her. What I wanted, be damned. But you didn't. And I'm grateful.
He expresses sorrow and guilt over leaving his fellow Spawn behind with Cazador, acknowledging that without him to absorb the brunt of their punishment, their lives become even more unbearable.
Cazador sired 7 Spawn. Me and my 6 brothers and sisters. He always insisted we were a family, even when he was carving scars into our flesh. I was one of his first. Some of the others came years later. He was a monster to us all, but did take special pleasure in my pain. He said my screams sounded sweetest. And now that I'm gone, I don't know. I pity the other 6.
And as a third example, he's brutally honest about how small and pathetic he feels when confronted with Cazador and the reality of the 7,000 Spawn.
It should be. I don't want to be like them. They're pathetic. Horrible. They do not. That weakness in me is dead. It's dead!
And then there's his desire to save Sebastian, one of his fellow Spawn, even while grappling with the truth that he was part of what hurt them, even though he wasn't in control.
Gods above. He kept Sebastian. I should have known what Cazador was capable of. He's played us for such fools. Whoever trusted me enough to let down their guard, innocents, idiots, and the unlucky. Thank you. Yes, this will all be over soon. It's just sickening. Seeing them again. I don't know what else.
These aren't just vulnerable moments. They're emotionally fluent ones. They show a man who wants to understand himself. A man who's not afraid of what he feels, even when it's shame, even when it's grief, even when it's too much to handle. And for someone who spent 200 years being told that his only worth was in submission and seduction, that's a huge deal. His ability to open up to a partner doesn't just make him a good romantic interest. It lays the groundwork for being a parent who can emotionally support a child. Because if he can hold space for himself, hold space for you, well, he can learn to hold space for them as well. A brilliant example of this comes during Act 2, if you're playing as the Dark Urge. After a moment of horrifying loss of control when you attempt to unalive Astarion in his sleep, he doesn't just flee, he doesn't condemn you, he doesn't retaliate. No, he shows up.
You are not yourself. All control is gone.
This thing won't have you. It won't win. Easy now, darling. You've got this. And I've got you. You'd do the same to me. Now just relax. Dawn isn't far off.
He sits with you, he acknowledges the darkness in you, and he sees beyond it. He offers compassion, boundaries, empathy, and strength, without ever abandoning you.
I felt for the bard, seeing you like that. Poor Alfera never stood a chance, did she? Now that you're back with us, we need to have a talk. You're not alone in this. None of us are. We can even compare notes if you like. I don't hate you, because this is not you. But whatever this is, you will get through it. And I'll be here to make sure you do. Anyway, it's a brand new day. I'm sure we'll find lots of people for you to kill.
And if that's not top-tier emotional availability, I don't know what is. That's a win in the good dad column. A big one. But it's also important to acknowledge this. Astarion is still healing. He still has nights when he's overwhelmed, he still feels unsafe in his own body, and he still needs reassurance and deep emotional care. So while his emotional intelligence is unusually high for a man in his position, that doesn't mean he's ready right now to be the sole emotional support for a child. He's still in the process of learning how to be that support for himself. And honestly, that's okay. That's human. Healing doesn't disqualify someone from parenting, but it does change what they need to have in place for them to be able to do it well. We need to talk more about Cazador, because while we've already acknowledged the trauma he caused, we haven't fully explored what it means to have that as your sole example of fatherhood. Men often inherit their models of masculinity and fatherhood from the men who raised them. And in Astarion's case, that figure was a tyrant, a monster, a man who taught obedience through pain and love through power. So the fact that Astarion, especially in the Spawn path, makes any move toward kindness, freedom, or emotional connection is honestly a miracle. And yet, he does, over and over again. He wants to be better than Cazador. He doesn't want to rule the others. He wants to free the other Spawn. He chooses not to ascend, even though it means giving up daylight, power, and safety, because he knows what kind of person he might become if he were tempted. And that's the key word here. Tempted. Because while I do think Ascended Astarion is not just a Cazador 2.0, I do think Ascension makes it easier for him to follow that same path. It removes any resistance. Spawn Astarion makes a conscious choice to stay vulnerable, to stay accountable, and to reject what was done to him, even if it means suffering immense losses. The choice reflects multiple traits of fatherhood that we're tracking in this essay, specifically his willingness to heal from cycles of trauma, his instinct to protect those more vulnerable than himself, his openness to unlearning what was taught to him by his abuser, and his ability to act from a place of moral integrity, even when he has every excuse not to. He isn't fully healed yet, but that's what makes his decision so meaningful. Astarion actively wants to break the cycle of trauma that shaped him. He knows what it means to be made into something twisted by a father figure, and instead of replicating that damage, he resists it. He chooses vulnerability over dominance, freedom over control, mercy over legacy. That kind of self-awareness, especially in someone still deeply wounded, it's powerful. I mean, he isn't just surviving, he's trying to forge a new path, one that maybe someday a child could safely walk beside him on. Astarion's choice to remain a Spawn, refusing the power and security of Ascension, speaks volumes about his protective instinct. He knows what Cazador's legacy could turn him into, and instead of risking it, he willingly sacrifices daylight, strength, and even his personal safety to shield the others, mainly the other Spawn. He chooses their freedom over his comfort. That's not just bravery. That's parental care in action. It's the act of someone who understands that true protection sometimes means giving up what you want most to ensure that someone else doesn't suffer. Astarion is slowly but surely teaching himself how to live without Cazador's voice echoing in his mind. That voice, commanding, cruel, all-consuming, once defined every part of his existence. But now, he's doing the work of rebuilding and identifying himself from the ground up. He's questioning the things he was taught to value: dominance, submission, perform, and control. He's asking himself what it means to choose, to want, to be. That kind of introspection is deeply uncomfortable, especially for someone who's been shaped by the trauma of centuries. That willingness to relearn the world, to question the foundation he was given, it's one of the most important tools that any father can have, because no one gets parenting perfectly on their first try. That's why they say throw the baby out with the bathwater. But being willing to grow, well, that's everything. And Spawn Astarion doesn't owe the world his goodness, just to be clear. After centuries of pain and dehumanization, he has every reason to be selfish, to turn inward, to protect what little he has left. And yet, he doesn't. He chooses compassion, he chooses restraint, and he chooses to put others' needs above his own, even when doing so costs him the power, comfort, and control that he's always wanted. And that's moral integrity, not perfection, but deliberate value-driven refusals to replicate harm. It's a powerful act of defiance against the man who made him, and a quiet promise that he can be someone different, someone better, someone all his own. And that's not just resistance, that's growth and integrity. And that's someone who could, in time, become a very different kind of father than the one who made him. It is impossible to talk about Astarion's emotional development without addressing one of the deepest scars Cazador left on him. For over 2 centuries, Astarion's body wasn't his own. He was forced to seduce, to perform, to surrender physical intimacy as a weapon wielded by someone else. His ability to say no was stripped from him entirely. And yet, in the wake of all of that horror, he's learning. He's learning to state his boundaries, to say when he's uncomfortable, to say no, even to people he loves. And most importantly, he's learning how to feel and express love outside of spice. With a romantic partner like Tav, Astarion begins to explore intimacy that's mutual, affirming, and in no way transactional. That journey, raw, messy, imperfect, is exactly what gives him the potential to teach future children what it means to truly own your own body. He's walked the path of someone who was denied consent, and because of that, he understands its value in a way many people never will. That insight could allow him to raise a child who knows how to articulate boundaries, who trusts their own instinct, and who will feel safe saying no regardless of the situation. Of course, there would be some difficulty giving the talk. For someone with this past isn't going to be easy. Talking about spice, love, and consent when you were denied all 3 can be very triggering. I would know. But here's the thing. He's already proving that he can overcome that. Just look at his relationship with Tav. Look at the way that he grows by the end of the game. So yes, he might struggle with the conversation at first, but he'll get there because he knows what it means to lose your agency. And he's willing to fight to make sure no one else that he cares about, especially a child, ever feels that way. At this point, we've talked a lot about trauma, history, and choices and turning points. But now it's time to step back and revisit the 8 core traits that define a good father, and ask, one by one, if Astarion embodies them. So let's break it down. Protective instinct. This one is a clear yes. From defending the Spawn.
We'll be back. You have my word.
To protecting Yenna?
If the shape-changer wants Gortash dead, then let's kill Gortash and get Yenna back.
To showing up for the Dark Urge after they try to unalive him?
I'd rather be the only dark power inside your body, if it's all the same to you. You're welcome to try and kill me, of course, but I don't die easily these days. You could have talked to me before things got murderously bad, you know. We are technically in this together.
Astarion consistently chooses to protect those that he cares about, even when it costs him dearly. He doesn't protect to control. He protects because he knows what it means to be unprotected. Emotional availability. Surprisingly, Astarion shines here. He's open about his fears, his shame, and his grief. He tells you about his past.
It's a poem. A gift from my old master Cazador. He considered himself quite the artist and used his slaves as a canvas. He composed and carved that one over the course of a night. He made a lot of revisions as he went.
He wants to connect. That doesn't mean he's always emotionally regulated, but it means he's trying. And that's more than most. Consistency and reliability. This one is still a work in progress. Astarion learns to be more reliable over time, especially in a stable romance with Tav. But consistency doesn't come easy to someone who's lived in survival mode for centuries, and there's still a lot of growth there. Ability to nurture. This might be one of the hardest ones for him. Nurturing requires emotional energy that he often doesn't have. He's still learning to care for himself, which means he might not have the spoons to care for someone else. It's the put your own oxygen mask on before you can put on someone else's. But there is potential, and clearly he wants to try. Willingness to learn. This is arguably one of his strongest traits. Astarion's entire arc is about unlearning what was done to him and learning to be someone new. He asks questions, he admits mistakes, he grows. That's textbook good parenting energy. Moral integrity. While the majority of the game he would not have this, Spawn Astarion chooses not to ascend. He chooses to free others instead of enslaving them. He chooses to do the right thing even when it's hard, even when it means losing everything he's ever desired, even when it means giving up everything that Ascension can give. And that's integrity. That's self-awareness. And that's choosing to be better. And girly pop, I am saying that as an ascended Astarion girly. Playfulness and affection. He's flirty. He's dramatic. He's got a sparkle in his eye and a sarcastic little bow on everything he says. But he's also tender. He asks for cuddles. He wants closeness, even when it terrifies him. That softness, it matters. Ability to heal cycles of trauma. He's not there yet, but he wants to be. And that's the key. He knows what was done to him, and he's actively choosing not to pass that on. That doesn't mean that he won't need support, but what it does mean is he's not going to become Cazador. Let's not sugarcoat it. Spawn Astarion is a man forged in unimaginable trauma. He was never given a model of healthy masculinity, never taught how to love without conditions, never shown how to be a parent because he was never treated like a person worth protecting. He has every reason to be incapable of fatherhood, and yet he wants to be better. He chooses vulnerability. He puts others first. He opens up, he learns, and he tries. Would he struggle? Absolutely. He would mess up. He might overcorrect. He might panic the first time a child cries and shut down when things get emotionally overwhelming. He might even need therapy, breaks, or a partner who's patient while he relearns the world. And it's important to note that just like in the real world, none of Astarion's lackings or shortcomings disqualify him from becoming a parent. We all come from different backgrounds and different needs, and how someone parents is going to differ from how someone else parents. If Astarion is struggling with something like the baby crying being triggering for him, that's where it comes in handy to have a partner who can balance you and make up for those differences that you are lacking. And while not everyone is going to have a partner or a village, it's really important that we at least attempt to have people in our lives who can be supportive for our children. Because being a single mother or a single father or a single non-binary parent doesn't mean that your family is inadequate or incomplete, because there's always the option to have friends friends, family, or even other people that are in your child's life, like teachers or from religious institutions or at your own work, who can be somebody that can help you in that process. And I feel really lucky that from the age of 12 on, I had 2 parents while I was growing up, but I remember what it was like to have a single parent and in return have a village, and our village came from our family. Whereas for me, even though I have a husband who wants to be there for the whole process, I want to have more than just a partner. I want to have my friends and family members that aren't part of the cult present for my child's life. So just know, even if you're struggling, whether your struggles are similar to Astarion or they're all their own that are based on, say, a disability or emotional trauma, or simply because you're alone or financially stunted, that doesn't mean that you're a bad parent, because it's not about who you are when you become a parent. It's about how you choose to show up and support your child and give them the things that you weren't able to have. And that's not a monetary gift. That's an emotional gift, a nurturing gift. And I really hope that at the end of this essay that's what you walk away with. But would he try? Yes. And sometimes that's the most powerful answer of all. Because again, parenting isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, especially when it's hard. And yes, I am aware that I have said that phrase or something like it so many times it's going to haunt you in your sleep.
Like the beeps in the code 4011 haunt me as an ex-cashier.
But still, Spawn Astarion, he's already showing up. For the Spawn, for Yenna, for Tav, and for himself. So would Spawn Astarion make a good father? Not today. Not in this exact moment. But someday, with healing, with time, and with the right support, absolutely he could. And honestly, I think he'd be the kind of dad who says, "I'm proud of you," and actually means it. Who will let his kid paint his fingernails and then proudly wear the chipped nail polish into battle. He would stab a man for hurting his kid, but he'd also cry because they drew him a picture. And that's the kind of vampire dad I would flay a mind flare for. And, for the record, depending on how you play, Astarion does become a father in the game. You'll need to be Astarion origin, romance only will, make him take the Duke path, and select family-focused choices throughout this romance. I'm going to show you some clips from one of the creators that I follow here, and I'm going to link to their full video in the cards and in my sources section in my description. I am not going to show you the whole video. You gotta go check out their channel for that because, baby, they deserve the views. But here are some clips of Astarion actually becoming a dad.
Your soul warms thinking of Lily Aurora Ravengard, your adopted daughter. A treasure of a girl, found at the entrance of the Open-Hand Temple. One grey eye, one brown. The crying gods faithful thought it a sign. They summoned Will the very next day.
Now, before you go, it's time for the part where I do what all struggling bi chaotic neutral creators must do and remind you that content takes time, effort, and a whole lot of caffeine. And in my case, I pay for the coffee by writing books. And Miss Ma'am needs more coffee. JK, but not really. My ADHD squirrel brain does, in fact, need coffee to calm down and focus. So if you loved this breakdown and more emotionally complex characters, burning spice that gets the kitten dripping, and enemies to lovers that involves literally chasing her down and tying her up, all consensual of course, check out my vampire romance series, The Gemstone Souls. It's got feral subdom spice, a literal god of all vampires, bi and pansexual leads who embrace all elements of their queerness, and a sarcastic blonde vampire who melts panties. Again, no, love, sorry, not you. Book 1's already out, Book 2 will break you in the best way, and Book 3 is coming for your throat. Literally, it's coming soon, but that release date is top secret, so you gotta stick around. You can find it on Kindle Unlimited, or you can snag a copy on Amazon. And if you do, I would love to know what gemstone you think you would be. Emerald, diamond, amethyst, ruby, or sapphire. Let me know in the comments and I'll know that you're one of the OGs. And finally, thank you for being here today. Because writing and gaming, they're my passions. And with subscribers like you, I get to share those passions. And I hope to see you again in the next one. Good night, darling.
Okay, so totally and absolutely random. But if you're one of those people that likes to make dirty drinks, I decided to make a dirty Alani with the stick, but inside the bottle, it looks like Pepto-Bismol. It doesn't taste like that, but it looks... BTW, not sponsored. I'm just very easily influenced by TikTok.